Morning, y'all. I hope everyone's having a good morning. I know it's a bit cold, that's why I got my beanie out of the car, so I'm a little bit warmer. But let's just give Rachel a round of applause, because that was pretty awesome. I saw, little things going on where I think they've changed that, and that must have been Barry's first time leading that song, and Rachel's trying to cue him with what's next while they're still going. So it was pretty impressive to see all that. And I'm one that I love the mistakes that happen, because I make a lot of mistakes. So this week I can share a story with you guys. I've been solo parenting for a little bit. My wife Kim went away. She's back now, so she's taking care of the sick kids. But I took Esther to kindy after taking my two older boys to Highfield School. Drop Esther off, and I'm walking back to my car. I'm not really paying much attention. I'm like, yeah, my car's blue. I'll just walk up to a blue little car. I walk up to this blue little car with my keys in hand and go to put the key in, and then I look up and there's a lady sitting in there on the phone because it's not my car. So that was pretty funny. And then my car was right next to it, so then I got in my car and had a bit of the laugh, and I think she was texting on her phone, so I'm sure I made a funny story with that one. But we all mess up, and I do it a lot. And I've been loving our Ezra series we've been doing. Last week we had Naomi share with us with what to do when the enemy attacks. This week we're looking at encouragement. Oh, that's not the right one. Just like, can you click the encouragement one? No one noticed that whispering. Do we get it? Yeah. There we go. This week we're looking at encouragement. And we all need encouragement sometimes, because we all mess up and get it wrong. Like, you might not be as bad as me and go up to the wrong car and almost break into a car that doesn't belong to you. But we all mess up. We all get things wrong. Stuff doesn't go right. And it's good to have encouragement sometimes. It's good to get encouraged. I know I was encouraged this morning when I went and got this beanie. God kind of encouraged me because it's a beanie I got from Nobby State School when I finished up there. And I saw Chappie Matt on it, and reminded me of the kids every time at lunch break I came down. They sounded like seagulls chanting Chappie Matt, trying to get me to sit with them. But brought back those memories, and it kind of encouraged me a little bit on a cold morning. So we're going to look at the book of Ezra, and we're going to look at chapters 5 and 6, which show us a little bit about encouragement. And if you haven't been here, you've missed a couple weeks. So far in Ezra, we've had King Cyrus decree for Jews to go rebuild the temple. And we looked at how there's some historical evidence for this. There's a cylinder that's in a British museum that shows that Cyrus made this kind of decree. Except in the cylinder, Cyrus decrees it for all of the, areas that they are occupying. King Cyrus gives back everything Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple before it was destroyed. So Nebuchadnezzar was the one that took them away. He was this king that came in from Babylon, took them away, took all their possessions, and Cyrus gives us all back. And then we looked at, I'm going to mess up this one. We'll call him King A. King A, I like King A, that sounds better than me. But King A orders them to stop because of the history of the wicked city. And Naomi unpacked that last week, but really the wickedness of the city was just the fact that Israel was strong at different times. Israel was known for rebelling. They were known for these uprisings. And that's scary if you're an empire, because a temple is a big monument for a city, right? That's what gathered us sometimes. And those cultures and those communities, their gods were really big. It was a political statement as well. There's so much wrapped in it. So King A is like, hold up, let's just stop that. And he orders a stop. So work ceases on the temple. And then it's important to remember that Ezra has still not been mentioned. Like, we're up to what, chapter 5 and 6 now? The book's called Ezra, but we haven't read anything about Ezra. That just blows my mind still. I don't know why. I just think it's cool. I wish someone could write a book about me and then just mention me in the last paragraph. Be pretty nice. Just have like one little line about me being awesome. But oh yeah, and humble. Awesome and humble. Put both of those in there. But Israel, they're in their homeland with no temple, which is crucial for them as the people of God. They're stuck in this hard limbo period. And it seems like they're stuck there for an overextended period of time. And this uncertainty. Work kind of started, but it's not done. And they're not doing any more work. And that's got to be a bit hard to stay in that limbo area. And I think we can kind of relate with that. If you're new here, we have a church house we've been building. Or not building, renovating? That's a better word, renovating. Church house we bought, our house that we bought, and we're turning into a church. Yeah. And that's been a long journey. And there's been a lot of limbo. And that limbo is tough. It's hard to hold. It sometimes discourages us. And then in chapter 5 and 6 in the story of Ezra in the book, everything changes because there's a new king named King Darius. And he's got questions. So King Darius has questions. So he sends out people to find out what's going on in his land. You know, what's the state? It's kind of like you get a new president or prime minister, you know, and they want to see what the state of the country is, right? What's the economy like? You know, nowadays we can get on a computer and Google it or look up statistics. Back then you didn't really have that luxury, so you had people get sent out to figure out what it was like. And that's what King Darius does. He sends people out, attempting to figure out some of these questions that he has and figure out the state of his empire. And I love how Ezra chapter 5 opens. And I just want to read with you guys verses 1 to 5. And it says this: Now the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, the son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel, who was over them. Then Zerubbabel, the son of, they got hard names. Shealtiel and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, arose and began to rebuild the house of God that is in Jerusalem. And the prophets of God were with them, supporting them at the time. Tatani, the governor of the province beyond the river of Shadar Bazani, and their associates came to them and spoke to them thus. So if you kind of follow along, there's a new thing. Prophets come, they're encouraged, they're like, yeah, let's go build. And then the new king sends his governors to check out what's going on. And this is what they say: Who gave you a decree to build this house and to finish this structure? They also asked them this: What are the names of the men who are building this building? But the eye of their God was on the elders of the Jews, and they did not stop. And they did not stop them until the report should reach Darius, and then an answer be returned by letter concerning it. So kind of what you've happened there is Jews are kind of like, no, we're not going to stop till there's a letter from this king. Get him to look into it more. You know, Cyrus told us we could do this. We're doing what's decreed. You know, go talk to your king. When there's a letter, then we'll talk, kind of thing, which I think is a bit brave from a people that's occupied from another empire to kind of tell that empire, hey, go check your sources and then get back to us. That's a gutsy move in my book, so I kind of like that. But I love how this book starts, because at the start, the prophets encourage the people so they can keep moving forward with God. That's what starts it off. It's only one sentence in the beginning. These two prophets come. They begin encouraging Israel. They begin telling Israel all these promises that they would have heard before about God. Proclaiming new things about God. Proclaiming how God wants to take them forward. And all this stuff. And it encourages Israel where people rise up and start rebuilding. I think that's pretty awesome. This whole thing starts with encouragement. It starts with someone coming in sent by God to encourage. And then boom, they start rebuilding. And I just think that's amazing. And then we kind of have, stuff happens after, but I think it's amazing what happens, this encouragement. And it makes me ask, what is encouragement? And encouragement, according to Google, get lots of my answers from Google. Love Google, so much better than encyclopedias and stuff when I was a kid. And My kids don't even know. When you go to get an encyclopedia that's for the letter that you want, you bring it home and it doesn't have the word you need because there's like 4 encyclopedia. Oh, man, so much better, Google. But getting back to this, encouragement is the act of trying to stimulate the development of an activity, state, or belief. So that's what the definition of encouragement is. And that's what the prophets do in the beginning. They come and they inspire. They stimulate a development. In all 3 of those areas, in the activity of rebuilding the temple and the state that they must have been in, they probably would have felt some encouragement, like, yes, we can do this. Some excitement was building. And then belief that God was still with them. Prophets come and give them all 3 of these things, and building restarts. But then next, the governor comes to check out the land of their new king Darius, and kind of tries to tell them to stop. He tells them to hold up with it, but they don't really listen. They kind of say, look, you go right to your king, and then when he gives an answer, get back to us. And they kind of get them to check about King Cyrus's decree. So that's one of the things the Jews are pushing here. They're pushing to look at King Cyrus's decree. And I think it's really interesting. If you want, I won't read it with you guys today, but the letter that they write is very interesting because they kind of go on the same lines as previously, where they talk about the wickedness of the city. They talk about how this city has uprisings and you'll have strong kings and all this stuff. And it's pretty clear the governor and his scribe are not for them to build. They're trying to stop it. And they kind of mention the whole, they say King Cyrus said this. Can you just look into it, King Darius? And this is the response that they get in Ezra chapter 6, verses 6 to 12. We read this. Now, therefore, Tatani, the governor of the province beyond the river, Shethar-Bozenah, and your associates, the governors who are in the province beyond the river, keep away. Let the work on this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews rebuild this house of God on its site. Yeah, there we go. I thought I lost the word, but I didn't. On its site. I love that. If I'm honest, I think King Darius could have stopped there, right? Jews are good. They get to rebuild. When? But the king doesn't start there. He goes on. Moreover, I make a decree regarding what you shall do for these elders of the Jews for the rebuilding of this house of God. The cost is to be paid to these men in full without delay from the royal revenue, the tribute of the province from beyond the river, and whatever is needed, bulls, rams, or sheep for burnt offerings to the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, or oil, as the priests at Jerusalem require. Let that be given to them day by day without fail, that they may offer pleasing sacrifices to the God of heaven and pray for the life of the king and his sons. That's another vow, right? And there's like a little thing we kind of missed, the tribute of the province. He's basically making this governor pay for it in a nutshell. I don't know about anyone else, that'd probably make a governor mad, but yeah, it's taking it out of your piggy bank, right? Pay for everything, sort it all out. That's pretty awesome. I think you can stop there, King Darius. You've done well. That's a big encouragement to Israel, but King Darius doesn't stop. He goes on. Also, I make a decree that if anyone alters this edict, a beam shall be pulled out of his house, and he shall be impaled on it. That sounds a bit harsh. And his house shall be made a dunghill. May the God who has caused his name to dwell there overthrow any king or people who shall put out a hand to alter this, or to destroy this house of God that is in Jerusalem. I, Darius, make a decree. Let it be done with all diligence. That's a non-Christian king, right? Has anyone picked that up? He doesn't believe in that God. I mean, they believed in multiple gods, but he still probably thought his God was stronger. He wasn't a Christian. He wasn't a Jew. But he decrees all of that. I think we could have gone without the impaling part. That doesn't sound nice. Someone's going to destroy your house and impale you. I don't like that bit. But it's clear King Darius does this amazing decree. This king did something amazing. And I don't think we sit with that enough. That he wasn't a Jewish believer. He was the king of the opposing empire. And can you imagine the shock of the governor and the scribes when they got this message? Because I'm pretty sure they were banking for like a response that we had earlier, where King A was like, stop work. They were expecting something like that, but they didn't get it. They got told, no, help them, get them all the stuff they need, and by the way, you can pay for it. I don't think that would have made them too happy. And the story goes on that they do that. They help, they do everything King Darius says, and they focus on rebuilding this temple. And they support Israel in doing it. And on March 12th, 515, the temple is completed according to the book of Ezra. And Israel dedicates this temple to God. And they celebrate because it's done. And I just find that amazing. And there's different dates that some people might give. I'm just going by the book of Ezra. If you go by the book of Ezra, it does some things where it talks about the different month. I think it's got a Babylonian month called Adair or something like that. So that's, scholars can do that and predict. So this is according to that book when it's completed. And I love how they celebrate and they dedicate this temple. And Ezra chapter 6 kind of ends with something that I think is pretty cool, where they're working out how these feasts are going to work, how they're going to do the temple. And we read this towards the end. And it's in verse 22. And they kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy. For the Lord had made them joyful and had turned the heart of the king of Assyria to them, so that he aided them in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel. The house of God is finished, which was made possible by the encouragement given to Israel every step of the way. Yet the prophets kind of started off, right? Prophets give this encouragement, they start building. And then you have a non-Christian king give encouragement by his decree. And God's encouraging them along the way, helping them to get this done. And I think if we read this story, we've got to be honest, because it's quite clear that the king and the prophets helped encourage. Without their encouragement, this story doesn't happen the way it did. The temple's not completed. They wouldn't have started without the two prophets coming and encouraging them. Furthermore, the temple wouldn't have been completed if King Darius wrote back, hey, yeah, you're right, governor, stop them straight away. I don't like this wicked city, but we don't get any of that. We get something totally different. Which makes me wonder, how do we encourage ourselves and others in times of need? Because Israel is in a time of need. They were struggling as a people, as a nation, and they got encouragement. People came in and encouraged them. God encouraged them through events and circumstances. So how do we encourage ourselves in times like that? When life doesn't go the way it should. How do we encourage ourselves? How do we encourage a friend when life doesn't go the way it should? What do we do? What does that look like to do what we see the prophets do? To do what we see King Darius do? How do we encourage like that? How do we provide that kind of encouragement? And I believe we need to remember it's not all on us. We can't do this alone. We can't do this in our own strength. We need God's help. God helped the prophet speak up. God helped Darius make the decree that he did. So we need God to encourage others. But I think we need to take a Jesus shift if we want to be an encourager. And I just want to hashtag trademark the Jesus shift thing. I've been writing a book for ages now that I've finished a rough draft that 2 people I trust have at the moment. But maybe one day there might be a book called The Jesus Shift. So I really like that. I think it sounds good. And I didn't really want to use it today. I kept trying to come up with other stuff, but God wouldn't let me. So fine. But yeah, we need to take a Jesus shift if we want to be an encourager. And a Jesus shift begins with us honestly sitting with God and looking at ourselves through the eyes of Christ, which is something we don't do often. If we sit with God, we tend to look at ourselves with our lens. How awful am I? Look at how much I messed up. Look at this that I did today. And we can act like we don't, but I think we all mess up like that. I know I do. There's times that I am not a great dad or husband to my wife and kids. And I mess up. And I'll go sit with God and I'm like, man, I'm a horrible person. I'm supposed to be a pastor and have this right. What? Poop, this doesn't, come on. You can be better, Matt. And I beat myself up. And we too often do that. But I think we got to sit with God and look at ourselves through the eyes of Christ. Because if we do that, there will be a knowing we are loved and accepted for the person we are at that moment. At that moment. Not 10 moments ahead. At that moment, we're loved and accepted just as we are. Christ looks at us like that all the time. We have this idea that when we turn back to God or we turn to God, he's disgusted or he's angry. No. He looks at us with love and grace. He accepts us. He embraces us. And it's big for us to sit with that. Because then we'll realize journeying with God as we grow closer to Christ is the main goal. That's what we're all doing. We're on a journey with God, and we want to get closer and closer to Christ and what it looks like to be a Christ follower. And we'll start asking ourselves a different kind of question. We'll ask ourselves a question like, what does love require of me in this moment? And that's a much harder question. That's a messy question. It doesn't have a clear answer all the time. It's harder to do. And I know I'm bang on about love a lot because I don't think love's easy. Because if I'm truly going to love people, I'm going to sit with people I disagree with and show love. And that's a lot harder to do. It's pretty easy to stand back and say, oh, you're awful, go away. But it's a lot harder to enter into someone's world and sit with them, to show love, to hear their story, to offer a safe place. That's hard work. And those are hard questions. And they're questions we need to start asking ourselves if we really want to be encouragers. Because I think when we do this more and more and we ask ourselves, what does love require of us? We'll realize that it's not our job to change anyone. We are simply asked to journey and encourage others to connect with the love of Christ that surpasses all understanding. We're not supposed to change anyone. We do not have the power to do that. All we have the power to do is encourage others and help them connect with the love of Christ that surpasses all understanding and that has the power to transform our lives in so many ways. That's our job. And I learned this in my own life when my son Gideon, who you can see there running super fast on his birthday, and you can also see there Kim's parents on the same day were like, hey, let's get a photo of Kim and Matt all nice. And yeah, Gideon decided to join in and make a tongue poking out. I don't know why. But Gideon, oh, I hit the wrong thing. Gideon helped me learn that. At around 2.5, getting close to 3, we started noticing that Gideon was different. He wasn't talking. There's lots of sensory issues, lots of stuff. And it led us on a journey where we found out that our son's autistic. Which, very simplified understanding that I have of autism is really, put simply, his autism means he can see the world in a beautiful way most of us are unable to. His brain is wired differently. And this different perspective that Gideon has to life can make aspects of it hard and challenging for him and for us. And I know it was hard for me finding this stuff all out, going on a journey with God about what it meant. And I had to wake up to the fact that it's not my job to change him. So he can fit into some boundaries we've developed as a society of how a person should act and be wired and all that. It's not my job to change him to fit into that box. Because you know what? I love that kind of stuff. I love him running like a madman on the deck. I love that he just comes up and that's how he takes a photo. I love that I got a school photo at home of every kid, most kids doing the, scared smile when you do a school photo, and you got Gideon smiling with his eyes and his teeth and just every body part that he can. I love that. It's not my job to change that, to make that fit into some box of what makes us feel more comfortable. My job, really simply, is to encourage him on his journey throughout life. Helping him connect with the love of Christ. So he knows that he is accepted and loved by God just as he was divinely created. And that's a hard thing to show your son, especially as he's growing up. Now he's grade 1, so you're starting to get those social things where just socially it's different. My mind still got blown one time. We thought we were doing the good parenting when stuff would happen and Gideon might lash out. We would go, how do you think you made that person feel? And we thought that was a good question. That's what you ask your kids, right? But when they're not neurotypical, it's not a good question to ask them. Because for Gideon, everyone feels the same way he does. So we had to go thoughts. What kind of thoughts do you think they're having? And I know that was kind of like a big shift. And there's all these shifts just because he sees the world differently. And it's in a beautiful way. And it's my job to encourage him on that journey, to help him connect with God and see that he was divinely created. And to show him that I have to constantly remember it as well. I have to encourage myself. I have to sit with God and hear the encouragement. And I have to do that more often than not. I've had to do it recently this week with just being a pastor. There's still challenging. There's things God throws at you. And I had a curveball last weekend thrown at me, and I've had to sit with God. I've had to be encouraged. I've had to remember God's put me here for a reason. So it's okay. I don't have to change and wear suits and stuff. I can wear my poncho and beanies, and I can mess up my words. I can say poop less, though, so I'm working on that for you guys. That's
good, man.
Good, man. I've done better, right? Done with it. I stopped myself 2 times today, just so people know.
Be encouraged, mate.
But we all need it. We all need it. And we all need to have those moments. We all need to remember to look at ourselves with the eyes of Christ. So let us go forward and be encouragers to a world that needs to connect with the love of Christ that surpasses all understanding by taking a Jesus shift. By looking at ourselves with the eyes of Christ, by sitting with God and being honest. Knowing in that space with God as we're journeying through things, there's no judgment, there's not disgust, there's not condemnation, there's love, grace, and acceptance. So let's sit in that. Let's rest in that. Let's continue to journey with God and grow closer with what it means to be a Christ follower. And it all starts where we sit honestly with God and do the inner work. Acknowledging we are loved and accepted just the way we are. Not for the person we could be or the person we should be, just the way we are. And it is the love of Christ's job to change others. Take that burden off of ourselves. We don't have to change anyone. And asking ourselves hard questions like, what does the love of Christ require of me? That's what it's going to take to go forward and be encouragers to a world that really needs it. To a world that's hurting. And that's what I want to go on the journey of becoming. And it's a journey. I'm not completely there, so I don't think I'm a great encourager all the time. I'm still learning. But I want to go on a journey with you guys as a church, because I would love it if our church was known for giving some amazing encouragement. For sitting around people that didn't expect, hey, you're Christians, you shouldn't be sitting with me. I would love that. I would love to be known for that. A church that gets its hands messy. A church that dives deep into the love of Christ and what that means for us. Because I don't think the world in Highfield is ready for a church like that. I think if we do that, we're going to see God do some pretty amazing things. And that's what I look forward to. So I really want to encourage you today with that message. And I'm just going to close in prayer. And then the worship team's going to come back up and lead us in 2 songs? Yes, 2 songs. Wait, I'll just pray real quick. God, I thank you for who you are. I just pray that you'll help us be encouragers. I pray that you'll help us be like the prophets in King Darius and encourage others. I pray that you help us do the inner work. You help us take a Jesus shift where we sit with you and we're honest and we know that we're loved and accepted just the way we are. Where we know it's a journey that we're on with you, growing more and more Christ-like. And that it's not our job to change anyone. It's just our job to help encourage others and help others connect with the love of Christ that has the power to transform everything in our lives. And I pray that you'll help us dive into that more this week to figure out what that means for us. In your amazing name.